I'm Rebecca Anderson, 37, and I just filed a restraining order against my own sister. For years, I thought blood meant loyalty, that family would always protect each other. Then I discovered the videos on my sister's phone, my disabled daughter Lucy crying, confused, as my sister deliberately triggered her sensory issues for social media pranks. When I confronted her, she laughed and said it was harmless fun. The police didn't think so. Now half my family won't speak to me, but I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Hey everyone. Before I dive deeper into this family nightmare, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. This story about betrayal and standing up for those who can't defend themselves shook my entire family to its core. If you believe in protecting the vulnerable at all costs, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life family drama stories where karma eventually comes knocking. Trust me, you won't believe how this ends. Growing up in suburban Ohio, my sister Melissa and I were only 18 months apart, but couldn't have been more different. I was the cautious, responsible one who followed rules and worried about consequences. Melissa was vibrant, impulsive, and the undeniable favorite of our parents. She had that magnetic personality that drew people in, while I was more reserved and analytical. Despite our differences, we maintained what I thought was a close relationship throughout childhood and our teenage years. Our parents, Tom and Linda, owned a successful local restaurant, which meant they worked long hours. Melissa thrived on the freedom, while I created structure for myself. In high school, she was the cheerleader dating the quarterback, while I was captain of the debate team. When college came around, I stayed local to help with the family business, eventually meeting my husband David there. Melissa left for California to pursue modeling and acting, only coming home for holidays and special occasions. I married David when I was 25, settled into a comfortable suburban life, and waited patiently to start a family. Melissa bounced between relationships, jobs, and apartments in Los Angeles, regularly calling for emotional support or financial bailouts. Our dynamics were well established. I was the stable one who fixed problems, and she was the free spirit who created them. Despite the frustrations, I cherished our bond and genuinely believed we'd always have each other's backs. After 3 years of trying, David and I were overjoyed to discover I was pregnant. Those 9 months were a dream, decorating the nursery, choosing names, and imagining our future as parents. When Lucy arrived, she was perfect, 10 fingers, 10 toes, and the most beautiful blue eyes I'd ever seen. The first 6 months were typical new parent chaos, but we were deliriously happy. Then came the missed milestones. Lucy wasn't making consistent eye contact. She startled at ordinary sounds and seemed overwhelmed by certain textures. At 18 months, after multiple specialist appointments, we received her diagnosis: autism spectrum disorder with significant sensory processing issues. The doctor explained that Lucy experienced the world differently, lights could seem blinding, sounds deafening, and certain textures unbearable. What seemed minor to us could be overwhelming for her. Learning to parent Lucy required complete reinvention. We adapted our home, our schedules, and our expectations. We learned about sensory-friendly environments, therapeutic approaches, and advocating in a world not designed for children like her. It was exhausting, but also profoundly rewarding, as we watched our daughter develop her own unique way of interacting with the world. Melissa's reaction to Lucy's diagnosis was initially supportive. She sent thoughtful gifts, noise-canceling headphones, weighted blankets, and sensory-friendly toys. When she visited, she seemed genuinely interested in learning about Lucy's needs. She'd ask questions about triggers to avoid and strategies that helped. I was touched by her apparent commitment to understanding her niece. Our parents, now semi-retired, became weekly fixtures at our house, providing childcare and respite. My mother-in-law Janet moved closer to help out, forming a special bond with Lucy. We created a supportive community around our daughter, and for a while, everything seemed to be falling into place. When Lucy turned 4, Melissa announced she was moving back to Ohio. Her Hollywood dreams hadn't materialized, and she wanted to reconnect with her roots. She took a job at a local marketing firm and rented an apartment just 20 minutes away. I was thrilled to have my sister close again, and hopeful that Lucy would benefit from having her aunt regularly in her life. The first few months after Melissa's return were wonderful. She came for Sunday dinners, babysat occasionally, and seemed to genuinely enjoy being part of our daily lives. She brought an energy and spontaneity that balanced our necessarily structured household. Lucy, who typically struggled with new people, warmed to her aunt relatively quickly, which I took as a beautiful sign of family connection transcending her usual challenges. What I didn't immediately recognize was how Melissa's social media presence had become central to her identity. During her years in California, she had built a modest following as a lifestyle influencer, posting about fashion, dating, and LA culture. When she moved back to Ohio, she shifted to content about rediscovering small-town life and family reconnect. Her posts were frequent, carefully curated, and increasingly focused on generating engagement rather than authentically sharing experiences. I should have noticed the red flags. The way she always had her phone out. How she'd sometimes repeat actions if she didn't capture them perfectly the first time. Her constant checking of likes and comments. The disappointed sighs when a post didn't perform well. But I was so happy to have my sister back that I overlooked these warning signs. About 6 months after Melissa's return, Lucy began having more meltdowns than usual. She seemed particularly anxious when her aunt was around, which confused me since they had initially connected so well. When I asked Lucy what was wrong, her limited verbal skills made it difficult to understand exactly what was bothering her. She would just shake her head and say, "No, Aunt Mel," which I initially interpreted as a phase of stranger anxiety that can be common in children with autism. David noticed it too. "Is it just me, or does Lucy seem upset whenever Melissa is coming over?" he asked one night after we'd put Lucy to bed following a difficult evening. Melissa had stopped by unexpectedly, and Lucy had become inconsolable for nearly an hour after her aunt left. "I've noticed it too," I admitted. "Maybe Melissa's energy is just too unpredictable for Lucy right now. She thrives on routine, and Mel can be spontaneous." "It seems like more than that," David said thoughtfully. "Lucy doesn't react that way to other high-energy people. Remember how well she did with your cousin Jake at the barbecue last month? And he's about as unpredictable as they come." He was right. Lucy had specific triggers, but she wasn't generally fearful of people. Something else was happening, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I decided to pay closer attention to the interactions between my sister and my daughter, hoping to identify what might be causing Lucy's distress. Little did I know that this decision would unravel the fabric of trust I'd spent a lifetime weaving with my sister. The truth was far worse than anything I could have imagined, and it would force me to make choices I never thought I'd face. The revelation came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon in March. Lucy had a therapy session cancelled due to her occupational therapist catching the flu, so I unexpectedly had a few free hours. On impulse, I decided to surprise Melissa at her apartment with lunch. We hadn't had sister time in weeks, and I thought it might be nice to talk without Lucy present, maybe even address the growing tension between her and my daughter. When I arrived at Melissa's building, I used the spare key she'd given me for emergencies. I called out as I entered, but there was no answer. I figured she might be in the shower or wearing headphones, so I set the takeout bags on her kitchen counter and sent her a quick text letting her know I was there. While waiting for a response, I noticed her phone on the coffee table, lighting up with my incoming message. She must have forgotten it when she stepped out. I was about to settle on the couch to wait, when I noticed something strange on her phone screen. Even from a distance, I could see Luce's face in the thumbnail of a video. I hesitated, knowing I shouldn't invade my sister's privacy. But concern for my daughter overrode my scruples. I picked up the phone, relieved to find it unlocked, and tapped on the video. What I saw made my blood run cold. The video showed Melissa in our kitchen, babysitting Lucy about 3 weeks earlier. Lucy was peacefully playing with her favorite puzzle when Melissa deliberately dropped a metal pot right next to her. The clanging sound was exactly the type that triggered Lucy's sensory issues. My daughter immediately covered her ears and began rocking back and forth, her face contorted in distress. Instead of comforting her, Melissa zoomed in on Lucy's reaction, narrating in a cheerful voice, "This is what happens when my autistic niece hears loud noises. Watch her meltdown." My hands shaking, I scrolled through Melissa's drafts folder. There were dozens of similar videos spanning the past 4 months. Melissa turning the lights on and off rapidly while Lucy became overwhelmed. Melissa introducing textures she knew Lucy couldn't tolerate, like sticky slime and rough burlap. Melissa playing high-pitched sounds on her phone and hiding the source so Lucy couldn't escape it. In each video, my sister was deliberately triggering my daughter's sensory sensitivities while filming her distress, adding captions like "autism challenge" and "sensory overload prank." Some had already been posted to her social media accounts, with thousands of views and hundreds of comments. Some viewers expressed concern, but many laughed along, suggesting new pranks to try. I felt physically ill. The timestamps revealed that this had been happening since shortly after Melissa returned to Ohio. No wonder Lucy had become increasingly distressed around her aunt. My daughter, who struggled to communicate her needs even under the best circumstances, had been systematically tormented by someone she should have been able to trust implicitly. I must have sat there for 20 minutes, watching video after video, each one more devastating than the last. I was so absorbed in my horror that I didn't hear Melissa return until she spoke from behind me. "What are you doing with my phone?" I turned slowly to face my sister, still clutching the evidence of her betrayal. "What am I doing? What are you doing, Melissa? How could you do this to Lucy?" For a brief moment, she looked genuinely startled, caught off guard by my unexpected presence and clear knowledge of her actions. Then her expression shifted to casual dismissiveness. "Oh my God, Becca, lighten up. They are just harmless pranks for my social media. Everyone does challenge videos these days." "Harmless?" I stood up, her phone still in my hand. "Lucy has been terrified to be around you. She's been having nightmares. She's regressed in therapy. And you're telling me it's harmless?" Melissa rolled her eyes. "You're so dramatic. It's not like I'm hurting her. I'm just capturing authentic reactions. My followers love seeing real moments like this." "Real moments? You're deliberately causing her pain. She trusts you, and you've been exploiting her most vulnerable moments for likes and comments." "Exploiting is a strong word," Melissa said, reaching for her phone. "It's content creation. Besides, Lucy won't even remember this stuff when she's older." I pulled the phone away from her grasp, my shock turning to cold fury. "That's where you're wrong. Trauma like this embeds itself deeply, especially in children with processing differences. She may not consciously remember, but her body and brain will carry this betrayal." "You're overreacting," Melissa insisted, her tone hardening. "This is my career we are talking about. These videos get 10 times the engagement of my regular content. Do you know how hard it is to stand out in social media these days?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own sister was justifying traumatizing my child for social media engagement. "I don't care about your content engagement. I care about my daughter's well-being. How many times have we talked about her triggers? How carefully we have to introduce new sensory experiences. You knew exactly what you were doing." "Fine," Melissa huffed. I'll delete the videos if they bother you so much. But you're being ridiculous. Every kid gets pranked by their family. It's normal. This isn't normal. I exploded, my voice trembling. Lucy isn't neurotypical. What might be a minor annoyance to another child is genuinely traumatic for her. You've been recording her pain and sharing it with strangers for entertainment. That's not a prank, it's abuse. The word hung in the air between us. Abuse? Had I really just accused my sister of abusing my daughter? But looking at the evidence in my hand, there was no other word for it. Melissa's face hardened. Abuse? Are you serious right now? I love Lucy. I would never abuse her. You need to calm down and stop throwing around accusations like that. I've seen the videos, Mel. I've watched you deliberately cause her distress over and over. What would you call it? I'd call it you being an overprotective mother who's raising her kid in a bubble, she snapped. Lucy needs to learn to deal with the real world. Maybe I'm doing her a favor by exposing her to normal stimuli. That was the moment I knew our relationship would never be the same. My sister wasn't just defending her actions, she was reframing them as helpful. There was no remorse, no understanding of the violation of trust. Just defensiveness and justification. I'm leaving now, I said, my voice eerily calm as I slipped her phone into my pocket. And I'm taking this with me as evidence. Evidence? Melissa laughed incredulously. Evidence of what? You can't be serious. But I was absolutely serious. More serious than I had ever been about anything in my life. I drove home in a daze, my sister's phone beside me containing the digital evidence of her betrayal. My mind raced through recent months, recontextualizing every interaction, every time Lucy had cried after Melissa's visits, every unexplained regression in her progress. It all made sickening sense now. David was working from home that day, and the moment he saw my face as I walked through the door, he knew something was catastrophically wrong. Lucy was at a special needs preschool until 3 o'clock, giving us time to talk. What happened? He asked, immediately abandoning his laptop on the kitchen table. I wordlessly handed him Melissa's phone, already open to the folder of videos. I watched his expression transform as he viewed them, confusion, disbelief, and finally a cold, contained rage I'd rarely seen in my gentle husband. How many are there? He asked quietly. Dozens? Going back months. Some already posted online with thousands of views. David set the phone down carefully, as if it might contaminate him. What do you want to do about this? The question hung between us. What did I want to do? Part of me wanted to pretend I'd never seen the videos, to preserve the family peace, to avoid the inevitable fallout. But another part, the mother in me, the protector, knew exactly what needed to happen. I want to call the police, I said finally. What she's done is deliberate harm to a vulnerable child. It's documented. It's ongoing. And when confronted, she showed zero remorse. David nodded slowly. I agree. This crosses every line. But are you prepared for what this means for your relationship with your sister? With your parents? I have to be, I answered. Lucy can't speak for herself. She can't defend herself. If we don't advocate for her now, what message does that send about her worth? Before making the call, I sent the videos to our secure cloud storage and made copies. Then I called our family lawyer, Marcus, who had helped us set up Lucy's special needs trust. He confirmed what my gut already told me. This was a clear case of child abuse through deliberately inflicted emotional distress, compounded by the social media exploitation. With Marcus on speakerphone providing guidance, I called the police non-emergency line and explained the situation. They asked us to come to the station to file a formal report and bring the evidence. Marcus agreed to meet us there. After arranging for my mother-in-law to pick Lucy up from preschool, David and I drove to the police station. The officer who took our statement, a Detective Rivera, was thankfully experienced with special needs cases. She watched several of the videos with a carefully neutral expression, occasionally asking clarifying questions about Lucy's condition and specific triggers. These videos constitute documented child abuse, she confirmed after viewing them. The deliberate nature, the repeated instances, and the exploitation for social media all elevate the seriousness. We'll need to interview your daughter, but we'll use a specialist trained in communicating with children on the autism spectrum. I felt simultaneously vindicated and heartbroken. This was really happening. My sister could face criminal charges. Detective Rivera continued, "We'll also need to execute a search warrant for your sister's social media accounts and electronic devices to determine the full extent of the exploitation. In cases like this, where the evidence is digital and could be destroyed, we move quickly." As we completed the paperwork, my phone exploded with notifications. Melissa had evidently realized what we were doing and had reached out to our parents. The messages from my mother were desperate. "Rebecca, what are you doing? Melissa says you stole her phone and are at the police station. This is family business, not police business. Your sister is crying. She says you're overreacting to some harmless videos. Please call me back immediately. Dad is beside himself. You know his heart condition can't take this kind of stress. Come home so we can talk this out as a family." I showed the messages to David, who squeezed my hand. "Stand firm," he said quietly. "Your parents don't know what we know yet." When we finished at the police station, Detective Rivera informed us they would be visiting Melissa that same day to interview her and potentially make an arrest, depending on her cooperation. She also advised us to file for an emergency temporary restraining order to prevent Melissa from contacting Lucy during the investigation. By the time we returned home, the situation had escalated. My parents were sitting in our driveway, and Melissa's car was parked across the street. Thankfully, Lucy was still with my mother-in-law, safe from the impending confrontation. "I need to handle this," I told David as we pulled up. "Can you call Janet and ask her to keep Lucy overnight? I don't want her anywhere near this situation." David nodded and stayed in the car to make the call while I approached my parents. Their faces were masks of confusion and betrayal. "Rebecca," my father began, his voice strained, "what in God's name do you think you're doing? Filing police reports against your own sister." "You haven't seen what I've seen," I replied steadily. "Melissa has been deliberately triggering Lucy's sensory issues for months, filming her distress, and posting it online for entertainment. She showed us the videos," my mother interjected. "They are just silly family moments. You're blowing this completely out of proportion." So Melissa had gotten to them first and controlled the narrative. She'd likely shown them the most innocuous videos, not the worst ones where Lucy was clearly in distress. "Did you see the one where she hides a speaker playing high-pitched sounds that Lucy can't escape from? Or where she deliberately uses strobe lights when Lucy was already overwhelmed? Did you see Lucy's face in those videos? Did you hear her begging, 'Stop, stop, stop'?" My parents exchanged uneasy glances. Clearly, they hadn't seen those particular videos. Before they could respond, Melissa emerged from her car and strode toward us, her face a mixture of anger and fear. "I can't believe you actually called the police on me. Your own sister. Over some stupid videos." "They are not stupid videos, Mel," I said, turning to face her. "They are documentation of you repeatedly traumatizing a disabled child, my child, for social media clout." "You insane," she spat. "This is why everyone thinks you are the most uptight, joyless." She was interrupted by the arrival of a police cruiser. Detective Rivera and another officer stepped out and approached our tense family gathering. "Melissa Anderson." Detective Rivera asked, though she clearly knew who she was addressing. Yes, my sister answered, her voice suddenly small. We need to speak with you regarding allegations of child abuse and exploitation. We have a warrant to search your residence and electronic devices. The color drained from Melissa's face as the reality of the situation hit her. This wasn't just a family disagreement anymore. There were real, legal consequences to her actions. This is just a misunderstanding, she stammered. They are just pranks. Everyone does pranks on social media. We'll discuss the details at the station, Detective Rivera replied calmly. You're not under arrest at this time, but we do need you to come with us to answer some questions. As the officers led my sister to their cruiser, she looked back at me with an expression I'll never forget, a mixture of shock, betrayal, and dawning fear. For the first time, she was facing real consequences for her actions, and she wasn't prepared for it. In the 48 hours following the police intervention, our family imploded. After Melissa's interview at the police station, where she was officially charged with child endangerment and exploitation of a disabled person, my parents' initial shock gave way to a complex reaction. They were horrified by the full extent of the videos once the police showed them the complete collection, but simultaneously devastated that their younger daughter might face criminal prosecution. My mother called me late that night, her voice hoarse from crying. The police showed us all the videos, she said quietly. I had no idea. I'm so sorry, Rebecca. I should have believed you immediately. You should have, I agreed, too emotionally exhausted for anything but honesty. But prison. Criminal charges. Isn't there any other way to handle this? She's still your sister. Mom, I didn't make this decision lightly. But what would you have me do? Ignore it. Forgive and forget while Lucy continues to suffer. Of course not, my mother backpedaled. But isn't therapy an option? Family counseling. Something that doesn't destroy Melissa's entire future. I sighed, feeling the weight of being cast as both victim and villain. This isn't about punishment. It's about protection. Lucy needs to be protected, and Melissa has shown she can't be trusted. The legal system is involved now, and it's out of my hands. That wasn't entirely true, of course. As Lucy's mother and the reporting party, I had significant influence over how aggressively the case would be pursued. But I needed my parents to understand that this wasn't an impulsive reaction, it was a necessary intervention. The temporary restraining order was granted the following day, legally prohibiting Melissa from coming within 500 feet of Lucy or contacting her in any way. Detective Rivera informed us that after reviewing the evidence, the district attorney was taking the case seriously and would likely pursue felony charges given the documented pattern of abuse against a vulnerable individual. When word spread through our extended family, the reactions were painfully divided. My father's brother and his wife immediately rallied around Melissa, arguing that family conflicts should remain private, and that involving the authorities was an extreme overreaction. My mother's sister, who had a son with Down syndrome, firmly supported my decision, understanding all too well the special vulnerability of children with disabilities. The family group chat exploded with heated exchanges, with relatives who hadn't seen each other in years suddenly taking fierce sides in our drama. My cousin Angela, who had always been close to Melissa, texted me privately, "How could you do this to her? She made a mistake, but she doesn't deserve to have her life ruined over some videos. You're being vindictive." I didn't bother responding. Anyone who could reduce Melissa's months-long campaign of torment to some videos clearly didn't understand the gravity of what had happened. David's family, thankfully, provided unwavering support. His parents and siblings created a protective circle around us, helping with Lucy's care and providing emotional reinforcement when the weight of the family conflict became overwhelming. My mother-in-law Janet was particularly fierce in her defense of our decision. Family loyalty doesn't mean enabling abuse, she stated firmly during a particularly difficult evening when I was questioning if I'd done the right thing. True loyalty means holding people accountable when they cause harm. You're being the mother Lucy needs. Throughout all of this, my primary concern remained Lucy's well-being. We consulted with her therapists about how the situation might affect her and how to minimize any additional trauma. Her occupational therapist suggested maintaining as much routine as possible while being honest in age-appropriate ways if Lucy asked questions about her aunt's absence. Lucy did ask, in her own way. About a week after the confrontation, she pointed to a family photo where Melissa was standing next to her and simply said, "Aunt Mel gone?" "Yes, sweetheart," I answered carefully. "Aunt Mel won't be visiting for a while." Lucy nodded thoughtfully, then said something that broke my heart. No more scary tricks. Even with her limited verbal skills, she understood exactly what had been happening. She hadn't lacked the awareness of the mistreatment, just the ability to communicate it to us effectively. I hugged her tightly, promising, no more scary tricks, ever. In the midst of this family earthquake, I received an unexpected call from Melissa's former roommate in Los Angeles, Jade. She had seen vague references to the situation on social media and reached out to share something disturbing. "This isn't the first time Melissa has exploited vulnerable people for content," Jade told me. In LA, she used to volunteer at a senior center, but she got asked not to return after they caught her posting videos of residents with dementia being confused for laughs. She told everyone they were overreacting, just like she's probably saying about you now. This revelation solidified my resolve. This wasn't an isolated lapse in judgment, but a pattern of behavior that would likely continue if not addressed seriously. 2 weeks after the initial confrontation, we attended a preliminary hearing where the prosecutor outlined the case against Melissa. The charges were formally read: child endangerment, exploitation of a disabled person, and violation of privacy laws regarding minors. If convicted on all counts, she faced potential jail time and would certainly have a permanent record that would impact her future employment prospects. Melissa appeared shell-shocked in the courtroom, a far cry from her usual confident demeanor. Our parents sat in the row behind her, looking years older than they had just weeks before. They acknowledged me with sad nods, but stayed firmly by Melissa's side throughout the proceedings. After the hearing, Melissa's attorney approached us outside the courthouse with a proposed plea deal. She would plead guilty to lesser charges, undergo mandatory counseling, complete community service, and most importantly, agree to a permanent restraining order protecting Lucy. In exchange, the prosecutor would recommend probation instead of jail time. "She's willing to admit what she did was wrong," the attorney explained. "She's already lost her job due to the publicity, and her social media accounts have been suspended. She understands the severity of her actions now." David and I discussed the proposal with our lawyer and Lucy's therapist. The most important thing was ensuring Lucy's safety and preventing any possibility of re-traumatization. After careful consideration, we agreed to support the plea deal, with the strict condition that the permanent restraining order remain non-negotiable. The night before Melissa's next court appearance, where she would formally accept the plea, I received a text message from her, the first direct communication since the confrontation. "I know you probably won't believe me, but I am truly sorry. I didn't understand how much harm I was causing Lucy. The court-mandated therapy is actually helping me see how broken my thinking was. I was so obsessed with social media validation that I lost sight of what really matters. I know I can never undo what I did, and I don't expect forgiveness. Just wanted you to know that I accept full responsibility now." I read the message multiple times, searching for manipulation or self-pity, but found only what seemed like genuine remorse. It was too late to rebuild the trust that had been shattered, but it was at least a step toward accountability. Hey everyone, I know we are at a really intense part of the story right now. I can see from your comments that many of you are feeling the same anger, and heartbreak I felt during this ordeal. If you're invested in finding out how this family drama resolves and whether my sister truly changed, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the conclusion. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice between protecting someone vulnerable and maintaining family peace? Share your experiences in the comments. Sometimes knowing we are not alone in these difficult decisions helps us find strength. Now, let's continue with what happened after the court case. The day Melissa formally accepted the plea deal marked a new chapter in our family saga. The courtroom was nearly empty, just our immediate family, the lawyers, and a couple of local reporters who had picked up the story. When the judge asked Melissa if she understood the terms of the agreement and was entering her plea voluntarily, her yes was barely audible. What none of us anticipated was how quickly the case would escalate from a private family matter to a public conversation. One of the reporters present wrote a feature article about the case, focusing on the intersection of social media exploitation and vulnerable populations. The story was picked up by several larger news outlets and soon caught fire online. Within days, my inbox was flooded with messages from parents of children with disabilities, advocates, and even social media influencers weighing in on the case. Most were supportive, praising the decision to take legal action rather than sweeping the abuse under the rug. Others questioned whether involving the legal system was an overreaction, suggesting that family matters should remain private regardless of their nature. A parenting blog with a large following shared the story with the headline, "Mother reports own sister to police for exploiting disabled child on social media, hero or betrayer?" The comments section became a battlefield of opinions about family loyalty versus child protection. David and I made the decision to maintain complete privacy during this period, declining all interview requests and keeping Lucy sheltered from the public attention. Her routine continued as normally as possible, with her special needs preschool teachers and therapists creating a protected environment where she could thrive away from the controversy. My parents, however, chose a different approach. Devastated by the fracturing of the family and worried about Melissa's future, they agreed to an interview with a sympathetic local reporter. In it, they portrayed the situation as a tragic misunderstanding between sisters that had spiraled out of control. "Melissa made a serious error in judgment," my father stated in the article, "but she's not a monster. She's a young woman who got caught up in social media culture and lost perspective. Our family is now paying an unbearable price for what began as thoughtless pranks." Reading their words felt like a second betrayal. They acknowledged Melissa's actions were wrong, but continued to minimize the deliberate and repeated nature of her abuse. The article made no mention of Lucy's trauma or the dozens of videos documenting months of torment. I called my mother that evening, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're still making excuses for her." "We are not excusing what she did," my mother protested. "We are just trying to provide context. People are calling her a monster online, threatening her. She's received death threats, Rebecca." "Death threats? She's still our daughter. And Lucy is your granddaughter," I countered. "Where is your outrage on her behalf?" "Of course we are heartbroken about Lucy," my mother said, her voice cracking. "We love her more than words can say. But destroying Melissa's life won't undo Lucy's trauma. This isn't about punishment," I explained for what felt like the 100th time. "It's about consequences and protection. Lucy deserves to be protected." The conversation ended in a stalemate, with my mother tearfully asking when they could next visit Lucy and me promising to set something up soon. Despite everything, I didn't want to deprive Lucy of her grandparents' love or them of her presence. The complexity of maintaining these family relationships while enforcing boundaries was exhausting. As part of her plea agreement, Melissa began attending therapy sessions and a court-mandated program specifically designed for offenders in cases involving vulnerable victims. She also started her community service hours at a local organization that advocated for disability rights, a requirement I had specifically requested through our lawyer. 3 weeks into her probation, I received an email from her therapist, with Melissa's permission, requesting a mediated conversation. The therapist explained that confronting the harm she had caused was an important part of Melissa's rehabilitation process, and a supervised dialogue might be beneficial for both of us. I was hesitant but eventually agreed, with the condition that David be present and that we meet in the therapist's office rather than a personal space. We set a date for the following week, and I spent the intervening days cycling through anxiety, anger, and a reluctant curiosity about whether my sister was genuinely changing. When the day arrived, entering the therapist's office to see Melissa sitting there, looking smaller somehow, her usual polish dimmed, was jarring. For a moment, I saw the little girl she had once been, my sister who had slept in the twin bed across from mine for 15 years, who had helped me through my first heartbreak, who had been my maid of honor. Then I remembered Luce's face in those videos, and the softening hardened again. Dr. Carter, Melissa's therapist, established ground rules for our conversation: no interrupting, no personal attacks, focusing on feelings rather than accusations. Melissa would speak first, then I would have uninterrupted time to respond, followed by a facilitated dialogue. Melissa spoke with her eyes fixed on her hands. First, I want to say that there's no excuse for what I did. None. I've spent weeks trying to understand why I thought it was acceptable to hurt Lucy for attention online, and the answers I'm finding aren't pretty. She continued, her voice steady but fragile. I was so obsessed with getting validation through likes and comments that I started seeing Lucy as content rather than as my niece, a real person with real feelings. The program I'm in has helped me recognize how I've been using social media as a substitute for genuine connection and accomplishment. I sat silently, trying to reconcile this seemingly insightful Melissa with the defensive sister, who had dismissed Luce's trauma as just pranks a few weeks earlier. The hardest part, she continued, has been truly understanding the harm I caused. My counselor had me watch the videos again, but this time focusing entirely on Luce's face, her body language, listening to her sounds of distress. She paused, visibly struggling, it was unbearable. I did that to her. Repeatedly. For attention from strangers online. When it was my turn to speak, I found myself unexpectedly emotional. I keep trying to understand how you could do this. Not just once, but dozens of times, over months. Lucy trusted you. We trusted you. Every time she cried after your visits, I comforted her, never imagining you were the source of her distress. Do you understand what that feels like? To fail to protect your child from someone you thought was safe. Dr. Carter guided our conversation as we navigated the shattered landscape of our relationship. Melissa didn't ask for forgiveness or for the restraining order to be lifted. She seemed to understand that some betrayals create permanent change. I know things can never be the same between us, she said toward the end of the session. But I am doing the work to become a better person. Not to get back in your life, I know that door might be closed forever, but because I never want to be capable of causing that kind of harm again. As we left the therapist's office, I felt no magical resolution, no Hollywood moment of forgiveness and reconciliation. Instead, there was a muted sense of closure, an acknowledgement that while the bonds of sisterhood had been severed, perhaps both of us could eventually heal in our separate ways. The next few months brought gradual adaptation to our new normal. My parents continued to struggle with the family fracture, visiting Lucy regularly while maintaining their relationship with Melissa separately. Extended family members either drifted away, uncomfortable with the ongoing tension, or became even more supportive, understanding the necessary boundaries we had established. The public interest in our story eventually faded, but it had sparked important conversations about family accountability, the exploitation of vulnerable individuals on social media, and the real harm that can come from prank culture. A disability rights organization reached out and asked if I would speak at a conference about protecting children with special needs in the digital age. After careful consideration, I agreed, hoping our painful experience might prevent other families from facing similar situations. 6 months after Melissa accepted the plea deal, life had settled into a new rhythm. Lucy was thriving in her therapeutic programs, having made significant progress once the source of her anxiety was removed. David and I had found a supportive community of parents raising children with similar challenges, providing both practical help and emotional understanding when needed. My relationship with my parents remained complicated but loving, with unspoken agreements to focus on Lucy's well-being rather than rehashing the painful past. Then came the call that upended everything once again. Mrs. Anderson. This is Detective Rivera. I need to speak with you regarding some new developments in your sister's case. My stomach dropped. What kind of developments? We've uncovered additional evidence during the investigation of her electronic accounts. I'd rather discuss this in person, if possible. Later that day, in a sterile conference room at the police station, Detective Rivera explained that while examining Melissa's cloud storage as part of the ongoing case, they had discovered something disturbing. The videos of Lucy weren't isolated incidents. Melissa had been part of a private online group where influencers and content creators shared strategies for generating extreme reaction videos, often targeting vulnerable populations, children, elderly people with dementia, individuals with various disabilities, and unsuspecting strangers. The group called themselves Reaction Hunters, Detective Rivera explained, sliding a folder across the table. They exchanged tips on how to provoke distress without leaving physical evidence, how to frame videos to maximize engagement, and how to deflect criticism by claiming they were just pranks or social experiments. I flipped through the printouts of message exchanges, feeling physically ill. There were conversations about which disabilities created the most viral reactions, discussions of how to provoke meltdowns in autistic children, and celebrations when particularly distressing videos received high engagement. Melissa was a relatively new member, Detective Rivera continued, but an active one. She joined shortly before moving back to Ohio. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just poor judgment or social media addiction. Melissa had deliberately moved closer to us with the intention of using Lucy for content. The calculated nature of it was breathtaking. There's more, Detective Rivera said gently. Based on this evidence, the district attorney is reconsidering the plea agreement. They believe there's grounds for more serious charges, potentially including conspiracy and premeditated exploitation of a vulnerable individual. What does that mean practically? David asked, his hand firm on my shoulder. It means your sister could face significantly more serious consequences, possibly including jail time. But it also means you and Lucy will need to be prepared for a more intensive legal process, possibly including testimony. We left the police station in shocked silence. The betrayal had roots even deeper than we'd imagined. Melissa hadn't just made a series of bad decisions, she had calculatingly inserted herself into our lives with the express purpose of exploiting Lucy. When we arrived home, there was another shock waiting. My parents were sitting in our driveway, their faces grave. My mother rushed toward me as soon as I stepped out of the car. The police came to our house, she said, her voice shaking. They told us about this group Melissa was part of. Is it true? Did she really plan this? The raw pain in my mother's eyes told me that for the first time, she was seeing the situation without any protective filters. The police had shown them the evidence, just as they had shown us. Come inside, I said quietly. We just found out too. Around our kitchen table, a new kind of family meeting unfolded, one where there were no more excuses or divided loyalties, just shared grief over the magnitude of Melissa's deception. I defended her, my father said, his voice hollow. I kept thinking there must be some misunderstanding, that she couldn't possibly have intended to hurt Lucy. But this, he gestured helplessly. This was calculated. "We are so sorry, Rebecca," my mother whispered, reaching for my hand across the table. "We should have believed you from the beginning. We should have put Lucy first, just like you did." Their acknowledgement, while healing in some ways, opened up new wells of pain. For months, I had maintained my resolve partly through anger, at Melissa for her actions, at my parents for their divided loyalty. Now, faced with their complete understanding and remorse, I felt the full weight of our family's tragedy. "What happens now?" my father asked. "The district attorney is reviewing the case," David explained. "Melissa's plea deal will likely be revoked, and she'll face more serious charges. And you'll support that?" My mother's question wasn't accusatory, just seeking understanding. "I don't take any pleasure in Melissa facing harsher consequences," I said truthfully. "But given what we now know about the premeditated nature of her actions, yes, I believe the legal system should respond accordingly." My parents nodded solemnly. For the first time since this nightmare began, we were truly united in our perspective. The next day, I received an unexpected email from Dr. Carter, Melissa's therapist. With Melissa's permission, she was reaching out to inform me that in their most recent session, before the new evidence came to light, Melissa had already begun disclosing her involvement in the online group. She had been working toward a full confession as part of her therapeutic process. The email included a letter Melissa had written during therapy, which she had intended to give me at their next scheduled mediation. It read in part, "I've been withholding the full truth. My return to Ohio wasn't just about failed Hollywood dreams. I deliberately moved closer to exploit Lucy for content after joining a group that targets vulnerable people. The depth of my moral failure haunts me constantly. I don't expect forgiveness, but you deserve the complete truth as I work to become a person incapable of such cruelty." Dr. Carter noted that while this didn't excuse Melissa's actions, it indicated she had begun the process of taking full accountability before being forced to buy the new evidence. Potentially important step in genuine rehabilitation. I sat with this information, uncertain how to feel. There was a tragic irony in Melissa finally beginning real honesty just as the legal consequences of her actions were about to escalate dramatically. 2 days later, the district attorney officially revoked the plea agreement and filed enhanced charges against Melissa. She was taken into custody pending a bail hearing, and the media attention that had begun to fade roared back to life with headlines about the Reaction Hunters group and their systematic exploitation of vulnerable individuals. I received a call from Melissa from the county jail. Against David's advice, I accepted it. "Rebecca," she said, her voice tinny through the connection. "I know you've probably heard by now. About the group, about why I really moved back." "I have. I was going to tell you everything at our next meeting with Dr. Carter. I swear I was. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to know I was trying to come clean." "Why did you call, Melissa?" I asked, exhaustion seeping into my voice. There was a pause before she answered. "Because I'm pleading guilty to all charges. No deals, no negotiations. My lawyer thinks I'm crazy, but I'm done with lies and manipulation. I just wanted you to hear it from me first. I didn't know if this was another performance or a genuine moment of accountability. Either way, it changed nothing about the pain she had caused or the permanent alterations to our family structure. I hope you find peace, Melissa, I said finally. I really do. As I hung up the phone, I realized that in some ways, this was the most honest exchange we'd had in years. 1 year after discovering Melissa's videos, I sat in a courtroom for what would hopefully be the final time. The case had evolved far beyond our family drama, with prosecutors identifying 27 other victims of the Reaction Hunters group across the country. 15 members had been charged with various offenses related to exploitation and cyberbullying, with Melissa's case being one of the first to reach resolution. True to her word, she had pleaded guilty to all charges without negotiation. The judge was now announcing her sentence: 18 months in prison, followed by 5 years of probation, mandatory counseling, and a lifetime ban on creating content featuring minors or vulnerable adults. Additionally, she would be required to participate in a restorative justice program and public education efforts about social media exploitation upon her release. As the judge read the sentence, I studied my sister's profile. The carefully curated image she had maintained for so long, perfect hair, strategic makeup, practiced expressions, was gone. In its place was a woman I barely recognized, yet somehow seemed more authentic than the sister I had known for decades. When given the opportunity to speak before sentencing, Melissa had turned to face us in the gallery rather than addressing only the judge. "I want to publicly acknowledge the harm I've caused," she said, her voice steady. "To Lucy, whose trust one violated. To Rebecca and David, whose family I damaged. To my parents, whose hearts I broke. And to every person who was ever targeted by our group's cruel practices." She continued, "No punishment the court gives me could equal the weight of knowing what I did to my niece. I'll carry that for the rest of my life. All I can do now is accept responsibility and commit to making whatever amends are possible, while respecting the boundaries that my actions have made necessary." It wasn't a bid for sympathy or a performance for leniency. The plea deal was already off the table. It seemed, incredibly, to be genuine accountability. After the sentencing, my parents, David, and I walked silently from the courthouse. There were no cameras or reporters this time. The media had moved on to the more sensational aspects of the reaction hunters cases, particularly those involving more prominent influencers. "Are you okay?" David asked as we reached our car. "I think so," I answered, surprising myself with the truth of it. "It feels final. Not the ending anyone would have wanted," my father said quietly, "but maybe the one that needed to happen." My mother squeezed my hand. "You did the right thing, Rebecca. From the very beginning. I'm sorry it took us so long to see that." In the months that followed, our family began a careful, intentional healing process. My parents became even more involved in Lucy's life, educating themselves thoroughly about her needs and becoming fierce advocates alongside us. They severed ties with the family members who had continued to defend Melissa's actions, making it clear that supporting Lucy was non-negotiable. Lucy herself continued to flourish once the source of her anxiety was removed. Her therapists noted remarkable progress in her communication skills and emotional regulation. The resilience of children, even those facing additional challenges, never ceased to amaze me. We maintained the restraining order even after Melissa's eventual release, a boundary that everyone, including Melissa herself, respected. Through occasional updates from my parents, I learned that she had become deeply involved in advocacy work around social media ethics and the protection of vulnerable populations online. She never attempted to contact Lucy directly or insert herself back into our lives. 3 years after that final court date, I received a package in the mail. Inside was a published academic paper co-authored by Melissa, titled "Digital Exploitation of Vulnerable Populations, Case Studies and Prevention Strategies." There was also a handwritten note. "Rebecca, I'm not sending this seeking forgiveness or a relationship. I know some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. I just wanted you to know that the work I've been doing is real and ongoing. The lessons I learned through my terrible choices have become the foundation for education that might protect others." Lucy's story, anonymized completely, has helped change platform policies and legislation. Your courage in holding me accountable quite literally changed the course of many lives, including my own. With respect and ongoing remorse. Melissa. I shared the package with David that evening after Lucy was asleep. "What do you think?" he asked after reading the note. I think she's finally found a way to use her understanding of social media for good instead of harm, I said. And while I can never forget what she did to Lucy, I'm glad something constructive has come from it. Do you ever think about reconciliation? David asked carefully. I considered the question honestly. Not in the way most people mean it. We won't be celebrating holidays together, or having sister lunches. That version of our relationship is gone forever. But maybe there's a different kind of peace possible, one where we acknowledge what happened, maintain necessary boundaries, and move forward separately, but without active hostility. David nodded, understanding as always. That sounds like a healthy resolution. The saga of Melissa's betrayal and its aftermath had fundamentally changed me. I had discovered strength I didn't know I possessed, learned the true meaning of advocacy, and gained clarity about the non-negotiable nature of protecting those we love. The family I had grown up with was irreparably altered, but the family we had built, David, Lucy, my parents, and the supportive community around us, was stronger than ever. In taking a stand for Lucy, I had lost a sister, but saved my daughter, and ultimately, helped many other vulnerable individuals who would have been targeted by the reaction hunters, had they continued unchecked. It wasn't the happy ending I would have written for our family story, but it was one I could live with pride and peace. As for Lucy, she continued to experience the world in her unique way, surrounded by people committed to protecting her right to do so safely and with dignity. Her story wasn't defined by what had been done to her, but by her resilience and the fierce love that ensured justice on her behalf. In the end, that was the only outcome that truly mattered. Thank you all for staying with me through this difficult story. If you've connected with this journey of family betrayal and the complicated path to justice, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories where karma eventually finds its way. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice between family loyalty and doing what's right? Or experienced a moment where standing up against a loved one was necessary to protect someone vulnerable? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else find the courage they need. I read every comment, and your support through sharing these difficult life lessons means the world to me. Remember that sometimes the most important family isn't determined by blood, but by who truly has your back when it matters most. Until next time, take care of yourselves and those who depend on you.